Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to the first episode of the Real Time Retrospective podcast. Now, if you're just tuning in and wondering what is this all about, well, there's no edits. This is done in real time, and I'm giving you a retrospective on stuff that I find entertaining and that I found that are readily available on YouTube. Now, due to YouTube's copyright policy, I really can't show you or react to any of these things, but I can get you excited. So that's what I'm going to do today. And I've come up with a roundabout way to bring forth the information. And furthermore, below, there are going to be links for you to check out. And also, there will be another update on my social media links, where you can find me, where you can find more entertainment. So stick in there. So to begin, and I do have lengthy notes. So I've got that plus a couple other things. So I am just going to move something over here. Hold on to your butts, Samuel Jackson would say. Oh, hold on. So that's just my, you know what that is, right? Hang on here. So, what we're going to look at today is I've got notes here to get you excited for this playlist, which I've made readily available for you guys to view. So we're just going to review the first three here and go from there. Now, spoiler warning in advance. So if you want to, go ahead and watch those first and then come back and hear what I have to say, that's all cool. There is no problem with that. So, yeah, I'm just going to move this over so you can see my lovely face. And, yeah. So, the first one is at the top there is Wrestling with Regrets, Guilty as Charged 2001 classic pay-per-view review. And there's a lot of awesome stuff that I want to get into here. But I want to make a plug here. Hang on. So, I'll show you guys here. So there's a great website that I go on to get the most accurate information about attendance and the match cards and stuff. Enjoying a nice brew of coffee too as well. And it's called Cage Match, the Internet Wrestling Database. I'll show it to you guys here. Hang on. It's a learning process with me stuff. So, oh no, my OBS. So yeah, so here, this has everything. And remember, and another thing to keep in mind, I just learned this today. When you're searching for stuff on the website, it's case sensitive. So make sure you're using all caps. So yeah, it gives me match rundowns, how it went. This is a German website, so a lot of it's been transcribed in English. Some of it not, but if you have like an English transcriber program, it'll work perfectly. So I'm just going to get into it here. So ECW Guilty as Charged. If you didn't know, the 2001 edition was officially ECW's final pay-per-view. It was their last pay-per-view before they went under. They had some house shows after, but once they went under and were bought out by the WWE, that was it for the original ECW. And at around this time, before this pay-per-view got aired, ECW had been off TV for 3 months with limited advertising and touring opportunities. And they were on TNN, which became known as Spike TV, which has turned into the Paramount Network. Try and wrap your brain around that and say that 3 times. Fast. Apparently, and Brian Zane makes note of this in his review, He said that Scott Hall could have been at the event, and boy, let me tell you, that would have been cool. Back in 2000, he did make an appearance briefly, and actually, you can see those appearances. You can see one of them on the network if you search up the Scott Hall documentary that WWE did. But if you go to highspotswrestling.com, they have all the ECW house shows and TV tapings from the fan cam perspective up. They don't have the pay-per-views, obviously, because of who owns the rights to that, So if you want an authentic ECW experience, and go to highspotswrestlingnetwork.com. I'll actually put a link below so that you guys can check it out. I'll actually put the actual link to the house shows as well, so that you're gonna enjoy it. One observation he made in the review is that during the event there's a hype package, and of course ECW used licensed music, and they used Rage Against the Machine's Renegades of Funk. But that's kind of funny because Rage Against the Machine, if you've heard of the band, they're very political, and they wouldn't license anything, I don't think, for any promotion or whatever, or anything really. And to hear it in ECW, that's kind of like, wow, how did they make that flyer in the radar? So, and yeah, another thing he mentions, and he mentions this a lot, and I agree with Brian Zane 100%. It's that the WWE's network dubbing over licensed music is annoying, and it really does take away from the authentic experience you would get in watching ECW originally. So if you want the authentic experience, like, you can go to highspotswrestlingnetwork.com or buy the DVDs, buy a VHS if you have to, whatever, from actually the High Spots website. So yeah, if you're gonna watch ECW on the network, you're gonna have to deal with very annoying and obvious dubbing that takes away from the authentic experience. So, another thing to make mention is that 2,500 people were in attendance that night at the Hammerstein Ballroom in New York, New York. To open the show, Joey Styles and Joel Gertner. Of course, they were a team. But it says here, of course, if you see, Cyrus the Virus and, of course, Joey Styles did commentary. And how they get to that point is interesting. But I didn't know this, and it wasn't mentioned, but I'll mention it here. There was a dark match between Belvis Wesley and Mike Bell. So Belvis Wesley defeated Mike Bell. Interesting. So there is a tag match, and it's a weird opener of a match. Cyrus and Jerry Lynn, they defeat Christian York and Joey Matthews. Basically what happens is Jerry Lynn runs in. The Baldys run in as Christian York and Joey Matthews are making their way to the ring. And as they're doing this, Jerry Lynn comes in, attacks Joel Gertner. Joey Styles gets the heck out of there. Cyrus comes in, and obviously the Baldys were paid off by Cyrus the Virus. And Christian York and Joey Matthews get thrown into the ring, and eventually Jerry Lynn takes in Cyrus, and Cyrus gets the 3 count. It's kind of a weird opener of a match. It's just like, even Brian is like, this was a match, I guess. So it happened, and it is what it is. So then another thing he mentions is that Jerry Lynn does a does a metal scream. Like his name, he goes, "I'm Jerry Lynn." He does this on the pay-per-view, and he even did it at the WWF New York restaurant at Judgment Day 2000. If I was there, there would definitely be, or said, if I was there, I would bring the true meaning of Judgment Day. And Brian finds it weird, but I'm going to be honest. I find it to be metal as fuck. I'm not gonna lie, it's metal as fuck. It's awesome. Jerry Lynn's badass. Jerry Lynn's the legend. So, next match we have is for the ECW World Tag Team titles, and it's Daddy Doring and Roadkill versus Hot Commodity, which is a team of Easy Money and Julio De Niro. I know you were seeing who beat who, but let me just take this ride with me. Just go along here. So, and here's some interesting tidbits of information that Brian mentions. So, Easy Money is a tights maker in wrestling. And Julio De Niro is actually the former Julio Fantastico from Heroes of Wrestling 1999 pay-per-view, which is considered one of the worst wrestling pay-per-views of all time. Yes, I do have it saved in a playlist here somewhere, and I also have Brian Zane's review, so yeah, we'll definitely check that out. Another observation is because they're in the corner of Hot Commodity, and Brian Zane elaborates why who is where. So there's Chris Hamrick, and Chris Hamrick worked the Independent Circuit. He worked in ECW Wrestling Society X. He even worked in TNA under a mask as Crimson Mask. He was a jobber in the WWF in the mid 90s. Also came back years later as a fake Triple H in a skit with King Booker. And then there's a girl by the name of Elektra, who was trained by the Fabulous Moolah and Johnny Rodz. She used to be with the Tag Champs. Brian Zane elaborates further as to what happened, so you will learn that. Another interesting thing is that Danny Doring has an innuendo moveset, and some of it an innuendo moveset. So some of his moves have wonderful names, such as the panty drop elbow, the G spot sweep, the bear pack, and it's just that's Danny Doring. Like you cannot not enjoy that. And it's a fun high spot match. There's also a funny G-string wedgie moment that Roadkill does on Easy Money. Another thing is Julio's spin kick, the jalapeno popper. It's botch. Fans chant "You fucked up." They also call Elektra a crack whore throughout, and that was ECW. The crowd was always savage. Savage. And of course, as you see, the champions retain at the end. But then, of course, to aid the champs who are getting beat up, Nova comes out. And Brian makes this a point again. His theme song has the worst dub on the WWE Network. And he didn't know when he filmed it at the time what the theme was. I eventually paused the video and I went to find out. It was actually originally Beastie Boys Intergalactic. Damn, I wish I could have actually heard the original version of it, not the network version. That would be something. So from that, Nova and Hamrick end up having a match. And Nova had a character change. It used to be a comedy gimmick. He was part of the BWO, the Blue World Order, which was a parody of the New World Order, which was big in WCW back during the Monday Night Wars of the late 90s, early 2000s. And now he is looking cut, and you'll see it. So throughout the match, Elektra constantly is getting involved in Nova's business. Brian does a great JR impression, especially when this is going on. Like he does a great JR impression as he's talking about Elektra getting involved in Nova's business during his match against Chris Hamrick here. He also makes a note of enjoying Chris Hamrick's in-ring style and seeing what from I saw. I liked his style as well. Then all of a sudden, Chris Chetty, who was beaten by Nova in a loser leaves ECW match they had teamed before, gives a fast count and causes a dusty finish. It appears, which is like a screwball finish where someone you think someone has how do I explain it? Dusty finish is where you think someone on the receiving end is getting pinned and the other guy's on top of him, but then all of a sudden the guy that was on the receiving end of the pin ends up winning anyway. Yeah, convoluted. And the reason it's called a Dusty Finish is it was originated by Dusty Rhodes years and years ago. So it looks like the match is over, but Louis Dangerously, formerly Sign Guy Dudley, attacks the legitimate referee who's arguing with Chris Chetty. He hits him over the head with a big mobile phone. So it looks like this is over. You think the match is done. No. Spike Dudley comes out. Spike Dudley comes out, and I had to do some research. Spike Dudley was actually the storyline. He was the commissioner for ECW to keep things in line and keep Cyrus the Virus from just screwing things over. Keep order while Paul Heyman was away, and Paul Heyman was actually trying to get a new TV deal for ECW and keep him afloat. But when Spike Dudley comes out, his themes it sounds vaguely like Highway to Hell again, network dubbing at its finest. Spike Dudley does deal with Chris Chetty and Louis Gentry, and then he counts the three for Nova to win. And during it, the original referee goes in for a 3 count, but then calls for the bell. So it's kind of like oh yeah, I know my spot now. So yeah. After that, Steve Corino cuts a great promo. And then we follow up with a I Quit match, of course, between Tommy Dreamer and C.W. Anderson. And it's definitely the match of the night. And I encourage you guys to check out the review. He even talks a lot about Towel Boy. I'll leave that to you guys to hear in the actual video. The link is below in the description. So, and then there's a funny / insider promo backstage that involves Steve Corino, Francine, Justin Cribble, Missy Hyde, and Jack Victory. And then there is a awesome 3-way dance match. Brian at one point says, "Yeah, this, it does feature Mike Whipwreck." And he convinced a lot of wrestlers dressed like the way he is. But I will tell you, Mikey Whipwreck had come a long way up to this point. He was part of the ring crew, and then he asked to wrestle, and they trained him. Paul Heyman had wrestlers train him. He started as a guy who was just a jobber, taking bumps, and then after that, he worked his way up. He became ECW champion briefly. He had a feud with Steve Austin. And eventually he became so good at his job, he trained guys himself. He's now retired, but still, he paid his dues. Brian also mentions because Sinister Minister is the manager of Mikey Whipwreck and Yoshihiro Tajiri, that he's a good friend of the show. Hang on. I'm looking at my notes. When there's a suplex, it's a tiger suplex actually, but Brian Zane actually accidentally calls it a dragon suplex. But he makes mention, he gives an asterisk and shows a tiger, and he means I mean tiger suplex. So yeah, and how that match went was it's a three-way tag team match, and winner would get a shot at the tag champs at the time in the near future. And how it went down according to Cage Match here. The FBI eliminate Kid Cash and Super Crazy, and Mikey Ripper and Yoshijiri eliminate the FBI. And the whole match involved Mikey Ripper, Yoshijiri with Kid Cash and Super Crazy, and the FBI, which was made up of Little Guido and Tony Mamaluke. And just go watch the review by Brian Zane. He explains all the high spots. I couldn't really catch up to everything. So, yeah. And then we get here, pretty much a no contest. Sort of another match happens. So basically, Balls Mahoney and Chili Willy versus Simon Diamond Swigger. It goes to a no contest. I will allow Brian Zane to elaborate on what happens, but yeah, another nothing match. But there is a highlight to this. We get an appearance by Jasmine St. Clair, and we also get appearance by Blue Mini, who looks great at this time. The match ends because Rhino gores everybody, and he does give a pile driver to Jasmine St. Clair. Now I'll go back. If you don't know who Jasmine St. Clair is, she's made many appearances in ECW, XPW. She was even in. She's in a few. Oh, she ran her own promotion with Blue Mini when they were together at the time, called 3PW, which also has footage on not High Spots Network, but their sister streaming service, TitleMatchWrestling.com or Title Match Wrestling Network. I will link it below. But other than that, she is a former porn star. Her claim to fame is that in one day, she basically had fun with 300 men. And if you want to see that feat accomplished, which was a record, there's a link below in my Discord channel for that if you're interested. So then, we have, and they put it here, they call it, it's a triple threat, but it's an ECW World Heavyweight title for it's tables, ladders, chairs, and canes match. But the thing that sucks about this is if you're watching it on the network, they just cut to Sandman because his whole entrance, including the other twos, is cut out because of copyright. And it sucks because Sandman would come out to Enter Sandman by Metallica, and he would just, jump in the ring. Well, no, excuse me. He would walk through the crowd, be drinking beer, smashing on his head, spitting his beer, basically wrestle drunk. But it was a highlight. And, yeah. Brian Zane does go on to explain what goes on, but a couple observations I can mention here. They use a regular, not a prop ladder, and halfway through it breaks. Like we're talking a regular ladder that it broke. So they had to get in another ladder. And after through all that, Sandman ends up becoming the champ. But as that's going on, Rhino almost messes up his gore spot. to attack the Sandman, and then the Baldies come out again and they attack Rhino Incredible after that whole match. So Rhino ends up feeling disrespected as the ECW TV champion without ECW having a TV deal. He threatened Sandman by saying he'd kill his family if not given a title shot. And Sandman replies, "Ring the fucking bell." But the match doesn't go long. It actually goes a minute, as you see here. And Rhino defeats Sandman, and Rhino wins and becomes the last person to be seen on pay-per-view as the ECW World Heavyweight Champion. But the championship does change hands after two more shows. After a couple more shows, a couple more house shows, I should say. I won't spoil who. But yeah, you would think if you watched the pay-per-view, you thought Rhino was the last champion. No, there was a couple more changes, but I won't spoil it here. And then, of course, Cyrus comes out and says, "Hey, if anyone wants to challenge, the new champion, step on up." Rob Van Dam shows up to challenge Rhino, but he ends up getting jumped by Jerry Lynn, and they have a good match. During the match, the crowd gets savage, and they chant, "Hit the bald guy." There was a guy that got involved in the match. He picked up RVD, like a guy from the crowd. He picks up RVD, and that's what prompted the crowd to go hit the bald guy. Jeez. And it was a good match. And Brian does mention that RVD would come out to Pantera's Walk, but he actually came out to a cover version by a band called Kilgore, and I'll link that music video in the description below. I've got a lot of stuff I got to link here, so you guys are going to have a lot of entertainment. So then, there's a new Impact Players promo, which is done by Justin Credible and Steve Corino. And then, of course, after that, there's a lot of aftermath from this. Brian Zane elaborates on what happened with all the talent and ECW as a whole after this. So I will let you guys check that out in the review. But at the end of these custom pay-per-views, Brian Zane, who actually has wrestling experience, comes up as his pros and cons. So his pros are the tag title match, Junior versus Anderson, the three-way tag match, and RV versus Lynn. His cons are the many nothing matches. Nova versus Hamrick goes off the rails. And there's car crash booking run amok, and he gives it a C+ grade. Now, I enjoy his perspective and his reasoning for rating and whatever. We're all critics, but because he has experience, I think I think he makes valid points and valid observations. And a lot of people talk about Dave Meltzer, who's a wrestling journalist, and his ratings. I don't live by them like they're the Bible, they're the gospel of wrestling. I just think that, in my opinion, if you're gonna have an opinion on moves and stuff like that, you should have some experience. Now, as a fan, if you want to talk about how, did this make you feel excited? Did that make you feel excited? From fans' perspective, yeah. Though some fans get smart and want to say, well, if I would rate this match this, and I wouldn't have done that. He does this, does that. I mean, people are going to do it. But at the end of the day, we all choose what kind of reviews we trust and what sources we enjoy. And for me, I enjoy Brian Zane. I love it when he does his classic pay-per-view reviews as well as his regular pay-per-views. So yeah, so definitely check that out. Definitely check it out. So yeah, that is that. And of course, on this site, a lot of people give their opinions, of course. So yeah. The next thing we're going to work on here, next thing you'll see, is the WCW Sin review. And yes, it is an interesting one. That is for sure. It is an interesting. I've made some notes about it, and I will go on a little bit of a rant here. But yeah, so in the next video you watch is WCW Sin, Wrestling's Regrets review. Oh, let me get into it here. Now let me pull this up. So, we got, believe it or not, I've got the card. Oh, hang on. So here's the match card for it. Oh, pardon me. So yeah, so this is Wrestling Regrets WCW Sin review. So let me get into this here. So Brian Zane had changed up his presentation for his classic previews, and he has great intro music. It is just awesome. Awesome music. There's also This is also part of a look at all the final WCW produced pay-per-views and events during its final year in 2001. I really enjoyed this little retrospective that he did, and that him doing that is what inspired the creation of the playlist that I showed you. I thought there's so much more that went on in 2001. I decided to make that playlist. So it's definitely something for you guys to check out here. So going on, WCW Sin took place at the Conseco Fieldhouse, and it's now called the Bunkers Light Fieldhouse in Indianapolis, Indiana. He mentions 600 some people are in the arena, but it holds 17,000 people for basketball games for perspective. And you can tell where that company was going. You know, if they couldn't fill 17,000, they could only fill 600. You know, people were voting with their dollars someplace else. There were 80,000 pay-per-view buys, down from 100, and 15,000 pay-per-view, which was down from 100. But from the last pay-per-view, and there's only 15,000 pay-per-view buys, and there were only 15,000 pay-per-view buys for last year's January pay-per-view sold out. So it was up more for its pay-per-view in the month it was, but it was down from 150,000. Excuse me. I'm going by jot notes here. So there was 80,000 pay-per-view buys for WCW Sin, but it was down 115,000 pay-per-view buys from last year's January pay-per-view, which was sold out 2,000. It had a 1.7 buy rate. A 0.17 buy rate. It's actually right here, 0.17. Tony Schiavone and Scott Hudson are calling the show, of course. And insider terms from the Vince Russo era of WCW is dialed back a bit. So, like, what's a shoot, what's a work? Like, that Brian elaborates on this. And I'll elaborate that Vince Russo is not a very liked person in pro wrestling. he does have some fans, and he has people who really, really hate him. So yeah, and it all stems from what he did in WCW, to be exact. So to begin, of course, there is the WCW Cruiserweight title match. That is between the champion Chavo Guerrero and then it's Shane Helms, and it's a great opener. And I always, the time I saw, uh, was able to have TBS in Canada. Um, always loved cruiserweight action. You can't go wrong with the cruiserweight divisions. So after that, they cut to the backstage. Mike Tenay, he's waiting for the CEO Ric Flair. Woo! And you cannot, I don't care how old you get, I don't care what mood you're in, but anytime you see Ric Flair, you can't help but go, woo! Another thing, and I didn't mention this, Ric Flair's hair is shorter. I believe I read somewhere that he was having surgery, so his hair did get cut. So he had short spiked hair for a while. Then the next match, there was Big Vito versus Reno. It was a pretty good match. Brian does hate a certain aspect of the storyline, and I will not spoil it here. I will let you hear it from the man himself, and you guys can make your own assumptions whether you like it or hate it. I personally, I get where the dumbness and not the enjoyment of it comes from, but I want to give you this. Big Vito, if you don't remember from WCW, he did eventually go to work in WWE as the toughest man to wear a dress, and he ended up doing an interview and photo shoot for Playgirl, and when WWE caught wind of this, they fired him. So that's how that happened. And also during this match, Reno's roll the dice finisher is being put over a lot. Like the commentators are just like, it's amazing, it's unreal. I remember seeing it back in the day and thinking, oh, it's pretty cool, but it's not like be all end all finishers. So that's my opinion. So then we cut to Commissioner Mike Sanders. He's bribing Brian Adams of Chronic to take care of Ernest the Cat Miller in his match later. Brian Clark, Adams' tag partner, tells him with more cash in his hand, he's found a job that pays better. And Chronic is, and Brian mentions this as well, but Chronic is basically WCW's answer to WWF's APA. The only difference is, APA drinks beer, Chronic is about weed. But Chronic could never show that they were doing weed or making or showing that they're selling it and whatever. Like they're hired hands or they're enjoying it. Because I'll give you a true example. I read it in a book that I have about the death of WCW. The higher brass at Turner Network, they were always changing their mind on what can and can't be said on air. So in wrestling, if you use an object that's not supposed to be in the match, like a chair or a table, you would call it a foreign object. Well, Ted Turner didn't like the word foreign. He thought, no, take the word foreign out. So they had to change it to illegal object. So instead of saying he's using a foreign object, you now just have to go, he's using an illegal object. Sounded like a mouthful, but it was what it was. But the book was always changing on what they can and can't say, what they should and shouldn't do. And yeah. So try and have a career in WCW at that time, not knowing what you can and can't say. So then there is a tag team cruiserweight match between the Young Dragons and Jamie Noble. between the team of the Young Dragons, which is Kazuhashi and Yang, and they have their lovely, beautiful Leia Meow, and they are in a match against Evan Courageous and Jamie Noble. And it's also a good match. There's a graphics botch on JB Noble's name. They call him Jamie K. Noble. But other than that, it is a good match. For perspective, and even Brian Zane elaborates as well. Jamie K. Noble is used to be a member of the Young Dragons, but he got kicked out. And Evan Courageous used to be a member of 3 Count, but he got kicked out of his own group. And those two three-man groups were involved in feuds for a while. So now they all split into 3 teams. So go figure. The guys who were kicked out ended up becoming a team together, going against the Young Dragons and 3 Count, which was weird because there was only 2 members, so you could have called them 2 Count. But I don't make the rules. They then cut to backstage. There's a purple hot rod and like 2 guys getting out of a clown car, as Brian puts it. It has Lex Luger and Buff Fuego come out. They tell the audience openly of their plans for later tonight. Totally Buff is a heel team. They're openly talking about what they're going to do to their opponent, Bill Goldberg, and his tag partner. I'll get into that later. There's a match for the commissionership of WCW. Mike Sanders versus Ernest Miller. And the Cat has Miss Jones in his corner. And Brian Zane mentions that he couldn't get into Mike Sanders at the time. I couldn't either. I got what he was doing as a heel wrestler, but I just couldn't get into hating him. I tried. As Brian even put, he tried. I tried too, and I just could not get behind hating this guy. So a little bit of storyline here. So Mike Sanders not only wants to stay as commissioner after beating Ernest the Cat Miller Ford at WCW Halloween Havoc 2000, he also wants the services of Miss Jones. The match is entertaining, especially from the Cat's performance. Like Ernest the Cat Miller made that match. Halfway through the match, Miss Jones takes a chair away from Mike Sanders, who's about to use it on Ernest Miller, and she chases him around the ring. But as that is happening, Ernest Miller is jumped by members of the Natural Born Thrillers, which is a group that Mike Sanders is a part of. And then all of a sudden, Chronic comes in. They beat members of the Natural Born Thrillers down, and they shove Mike Sanders' bribe down his throat. And Ernest Miller wins and stays WCW commissioner. So that is that. Cuts backstage. Ric Flair shows Goldberg footage of Totally Buff's plans. Goldberg takes a photo with a fan. That may play into later with this fan. Jeff Jarrett cuts a promo with Mean Gene Okerlund and says he'll have Scott Steiner's back in the main event. Will he? Won't he? Then there's a penalty box 6-man tag team match. Special referee is Jim Duggan. So it's Team Canada, which is comprised of Elix Skipper, Lance Storm, and Mike Awesome, who have major guns in their corner. They take on the Filthy Animals of Billy Kim and Conan and Rey Mysterio Jr., who have Tigress, who used to be a Nitro Girl in their corner. Another observation is Rey Mysterio had been wrestling unmasked since February 1999. So you'll notice that when you see the match, he's unmasked. And you'll be going, what? That's Rey Mysterio? No way. But I will tell you this, WWE doesn't touch on it often. But in the latest 2K game where the focus was on Rey Mysterio, one of the downloadable packs was a version of Rey Mysterio unmasked. So they at least acknowledge the fact that he was unmasked for a brief time, but they're keeping him masked because it sells merch, right? But this whole match, and Brian tries to explain it the best and elaborates as best he could. God bless him. But this breaks my brain. Gimmick matches, when they break my brain because I'm trying to figure out how it works. I know it's wrestling, but I'm trying to figure out and get lost in it and try to figure out what is going on. It just breaks my brain, so I just lose interest. And of course, the um, Team Canada does beat Filthy Animals, but still, it breaks my brain to try and wrap around what's going on, what, when, where. But then, as I said, God bless Brian Zane for doing his best to elaborate on what's going on. But yeah, that just breaks my brain. So then there's a Natural Born Thrillers promo with Mike Tenay. Of course, like Mike Sanders and his crew. And there's another botch on commentary. Mike today almost calls the Natural Born Thrillers opponents the outsiders instead of the insiders. And the insiders is a team made out of Kevin Nash and Diamond Dallas Page, and that's a reference to them being those guys who have inside track on WCW and the goings on, and they're the good guys. But it's also interesting because, and Brian mentions this too, and I totally forgot. Diamond Dallas Page and Kevin Nash used to be a tag team called the Vegas Connection, so it's kind of like a reunion for them. So then after that, we have our WCW title match, hardcore match, and this is interesting. So, and I'll explain why. So there's a triple threat. It's a triple threat match for the WCW Hardcore title, and it's Terry Funk versus Cobra versus, as Brian put it, the man called Ming. There's lots of chair shots to the head. It's hard to watch because if you try to watch this without knowing about CTE, which came to light after the whole Chris Benoit incident, but it is hard to watch. You see guys taking chair shots to the head. And I actually was at a local wrestling event a while back, and I saw that the guy did what he was supposed to: put your hand up so you don't get hit. I've learned that from a couple documentaries I've watched. Like, you put your hand up if you're gonna get hit in the head. But man, you watch it and you go, what's that gonna do down the line, you know? And if you're a football fan, you even know this, looking at guys getting hit. But yeah, it is hard to watch from that perspective. But Ming, at one point, he is hit with a shovel, and a deflating noise is made. Brian actually goes, they hit him with the shovel, and Ming starts to deflate. It's just like, yeah, where, why? That is a bad prop. So then Ming wins the match and becomes the WCW Hardcore Champion. But, however, interesting enough, 1 week later, Ming leaves WCW, and he's the final Hardcore Champion. He goes back to the WWF and re-debuts as Haku in the 2001 Royal Rumble. And I had to look this up. On January 21st of 2001, WCW officially deactivated the championship. There is more information in the next little review that I do to elaborate more, but yeah, he literally left, and there's a reason why, and I'll get into it more eventually. Oh, my cat. Oh, my cat. He just wants out. So, backstage, Ric Flair congratulates Ernest the Cat Miller backstage. He gives Miller the night off. Gene interviews Sid Vicious. He mentions he's gonna power bomb his opponent straight to hell, but hell is censored. Why? Brian Zane is, who the fuck censors hell? And I have to go, yeah. So then after that, we have the WCW Tag Team title match here between the Insiders and Natural Born Thrillers. There's Brian Zane does review it, but I'll just give you a few notes here. There's lots of shenanigans from the Natural Born Thrillers leading up to and during the match. Sean O'Hare and Chuck Palumbo, who are the members of the Natural Born Thrillers, again, that are the teaming up in the match. They win the belts after help from Totally Buff and, of course, the Natural Born Thrillers. And give an Oscar to the commentary team, who are just milking the injustice, I tell you. So then the new champs, of course, celebrate. And then we cut backstage where Ric Flair, he hops into his limo. He says, it's time, main event not yet happening, though. So then we have a First Blood chain on a pole match for the WCW US heavyweight title, and it's between General Erection and Shane Douglas. Gimmicks are overloaded. I don't blame them. Again, I don't need my brain to break. Shane wins, and at the end of the match, Shane Douglas ends up winning his first and only singles WCW championship. Go figure. He was ECW champion when he was in ECW. And then when he came to WCW, he only ever won the WCW heavyweight title. I thought he'd be pushed a little bit more, but that's just me. Then after that, there's a Scott Steiner promo. Brian won't rhyme because he doesn't need Scott Steiner finding him. I don't blame him. Steiner feels the deck is stacked against him, but he'll knock everyone down. And then they cut to General Erection, who lost his match against Shane Douglas, and he gets his cue to be really mad. It's obvious that he waited for his cue. So then we move on to a no disqualification tag team match, and I totally forgot it was no disqualification. So Goldberg and Sergeant Dwayne Bruce take on Totally Buff, which is a team of Buff Bagwell and Lex Luger. Goldberg's career and streak are on the line, and it's, of course, no DQ. Totally Buff go after the Sarge. It affects Goldberg. Another thing, they're attacking Goldberg emotionally and mentally. So Sergeant Dwayne Bruce, who had a lot of gimmicks and was the head trainer for WCW's Power Plant, aka Training Center, Brian mentions that the commentary team tries to not say he's not a good wrestler. The reason for Goldberg's career and streak being on the line is that Vince Russo cursed Goldberg's career, would be banned for life if he couldn't meet his original streak that he had before he got defeated by Kevin Nash way back in December 1998. And I can't remember what the exact number was, but the number they were saying was far from what it was accurately. So then Michael Buffer calls this match. The legendary Michael Buffer, does the announcements for the match, but he doesn't say, let's get ready to rumble. He says, let's bring him out. So you can imagine, let's bring him out. Throughout the match, Goldberg's doing most of the work, of course. And then Lex Luger tries to attack the Goldberg fan, but then the Goldberg fan maces Goldberg, and there's no harm to the fan or anyone around him. So you can obviously tell that the mace wasn't really mace, it was probably water. Goldberg ends up losing the match, and fans are either sad or tired. But Goldberg had to legit leave because he was getting shoulder surgery. unfortunate due to hindsight when you think about it, as WCW was going out of business at the time. So then we have the main event match. This is where I go on my little rant here. So we have the main event, WCW World Heavyweight Title three-way dance. It's between Scott Steiner, Jeff Jarrett, and Sid Vicious. But there's also a mystery man thrown in as well, so it's almost a four-way. It's later to revealed to be Road Warrior Animal, and at one point it was Rick Steiner. Brian mentions that in the video. A lot of times when they have a masked wrestler or whatever, they just put someone in the suit till they know who they're going to go with. And I've talked with pro wrestlers on local circuit, and I said, "Is that true?" And it's like, "Yeah. Sometimes when we don't know what it is, we just put random guys in the suit till we know they know what they're doing." So yeah, but as Brian puts it, this match wasn't good. And then Sid Vicious, halfway through the match, ends up having a horrific leg injury. The reason being is he was told by Johnny Ace, who became John Laurinaitis in WWE, to do the move. It would be awesome. Sid Vicious didn't want to do it because he's not a person he's just a big guy. He has no reason to go to the ropes, but I've read that if he didn't do it, he would have been fired. So he did it, broke his leg, but Brian mentions a lot of the rehab and stuff that Sid Vicious went through, and he's come out better on the other side. As for John Laurinaitis, call it karma. When the whole Vince McMahon hush money thing happened, they found out he was involved with that as well, and he was let go by the board of directors. So call it. He had some misconduct, sexual misconduct. So yeah, call it karma. But man, I don't. Just seeing what happened to Sid Vicious, that really upsets me. And the fact during the match, it was still going on as this guy is clearly injured, clearly severely injured with his leg. It's just that's just that's just bad. And for comparison, when Hangman Adam Page, an AEW wrestler, he got injured by Jon Moxley accidentally on an episode of Dynamite. The trainers and staff and medical personnel, they were right there. They were looking it over. The camera was cutting away. Camera wasn't zooming in. They weren't. They didn't later broadcast the injury as it went on. They didn't later broadcast the injury about what happened in subsequent television episodes. This is what WCW did on Nitro and Thunder showing, "Oh, this is what happened to Sid Vicious." Like, oh, for God's sake, you guys. And they just didn't do anything till after the match ended. And yeah, it was just because of the injury, the match suffered. Match suffered before, match suffered after. And of course, from this group called the Magnificent Seven is formed. And I'll let Brian Zane elaborate on who the Magnificent Seven is. So then his pros and cons include pro is Guerrero versus Helms, Young Dragons versus Noble and Courageous, and Rection versus Douglas. His cons are the penalty box match, the Goldberg and Sergeant Dwayne versus Totally Buff, and the main event, and it gets a C- grade. So yeah, it's just unfortunate. It is really unfortunate how that went. So I So yeah. So I am just going to tell you guys this so you can see me for a moment. Just want to let you guys know of a little update here. So let me go. I'll just close this down. I want to take a moment to just show you guys here. So we go to my page here. I've clearly upgraded. So I've got a photo, I've got a background photo, and at the end of this video you will see a little watermark, which is just a running river that tells you to subscribe. But I've uploaded my Instagram, Twitter feed, TikTok feed, Discord, and a Facebook group here. Another thing, so I have the email address, but I've also added Rumble. And I'm going to use Rumble not only to do exclusive stuff, but I'm also going to cross promote my YouTube content on there as well. And I recommend anybody who's starting or has a YouTube channel, if you want to start making money while you're trying to reach your goals on YouTube, it's the best way to do it. Now I'm not guaranteeing 100% success, but you will eventually start making cash with Rumble. So definitely check that out. In fact, I'll just go here. Yeah, see, I'm up on Rumble now. Eventually, I'll work my way to, and when it starts to happen, I'll show you guys my progress. But yeah, that's definitely what's going on. So yeah, this is got updates. I'm still working on making the Rumble page look good. So yeah, you can follow me on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, Discord, and now Rumble. So definitely check that out. So now, I have lost something, but I'll find it. So I then moved on. I waited a couple days, but now I wanted to review the WWF Royal Rumble 2001. I couldn't show you Wrestling with Regrets because I guess it got removed because of copyright claims. So I ended up finding the OSW reviews, which is just as great, and it's their 47th review, and they are awesome. And I had to make a lot of notes. A lot of notes. Boy, I tell you, it's a long one. I'm not gonna lie, it is super, super long. But you know what? I am actually going to save this one for another time. I just don't have enough time to talk about on this podcast. So I am going to talk about the 2001 Royal Rumble all by itself, the review, next time. So for now, you guys take care. You have a great day. Enjoy.